Hello, this material is for FAM 1265 and this is for week 4. During this particular section of the course, I want to talk about something that is absolutely crucial for pharmacology and essential for being able to administer medications safely, and that is critical thinking. Critical thinking, I think, is underestimated in our educational system. I think that teachers and professors sometimes assume that students will be able to think critically about information and not just simply, accept what is put in front of them. I think that, in fact, critical thinking is a skill that we all need to learn and we have to practice. So, and in order to practice, we have to do it consciously. We're going to go through some of the basic principles of critical thinking, and we're also I'm going to introduce you to some exercises, and you could in this presentation just skip through them and think yada yada yada, or you could actually grab a pen and paper and participate in these exercises. And I think the participation part will help expand your abilities to think critically. When we talk about critical thinking, it is not the same thing as criticism. Critical thinking is a reflective style of thinking, so you think about your own thought process, and it's based on logic, rationality, and an analysis of all points of view. So not just your own, but thinking about all possible points of view and coming to a conclusion based on all of the available evidence. Criticism tends to be negative. It's a negative viewpoint of a particular subject, whereas critical thinking could have both negative and positive aspects to it. Critical thinking is absolutely important for safe administration of medications, particularly in this age where information is so abundant. So you can go online and you could find all sorts of information to support or refute your own point of view. And I think the trick is being able to sort through all of that information and come to a conclusion based on a set of evidence that you respect. If we sent you to your pen and paper and asked you to write down, what are some traits of critical thinkers? So what do you think? If you took a minute and just paused this and wrote down, what words that just pop into your head when we say critical thinking or a person that thinks critically. If you paused and you wrote down some words, hopefully some of them would have been things like rational or skeptical. So critical thinkers rely on reason rather than emotion. They require evidence. They ignore no known evidence. So even evidence that goes against what their point of view is, they still take that into account. And they recognize the extent or the weight of individual pieces of evidence, that they may not all have the same weight. They're concerned more with finding the best explanation than being right. So a critical thinker is able to come to a conclusion and then maybe based on some new evidence that comes in, change their conclusion. They are precise and comprehensive and exhaustive. They resist manipulation and irrational appeals, and they avoid snap judgments. So rational, they are active, not passive. So a critical thinker will ask questions and analyze. If they don't understand something, that's okay. They just ask the questions. They consciously apply strategies to uncover the meaning or make sure that they understand and don't just accept, even if even if it seems to a person seems very passionate about it, they still want to understand, what's behind that. And a critical thinker is open-minded. So they're open to new ideas and new perspectives. They may not agree with another person, but they should be able to see where their point of view comes from. Where is the point where they actually disagree? It's rather than just rejecting unpopular views just out of hand. Critical thinkers are willing to challenge their own beliefs. They're willing to investigate competing evidence to their beliefs and take that into account when they're coming to a conclusion. Part of critical thinking is being able to think creatively outside of the box. Are we all able to think creatively? So here's another exercise. You can press pause again, and I'd like you to write down on a piece of paper as many uses that you can think of for a paperclip. So pause now and just take 2 minutes and write down as many things you can think of to do with a paperclip. So if you've restarted this presentation, count up how many different uses you could think of. Most people might come up with between 10 to 15 different uses for a paperclip. People who are really good at divergent thinking would come up with around 200. And by divergent thinking, we mean the ability to interpret a question in many different ways, and the ability to see many different answers to a question. So for example, what would the paperclip be? What could a paperclip do if it was 200 feet tall and made out of foam? Right? So you can, change the parameters of the paperclip and think creatively around that. To the question of are we all able to think creatively, here's an interesting study. So this was a long-term study of kindergarten children. And at the age when they were in kindergarten, 98% measured at the genius level in divergent thinking. 5 years later, those at the genius level dropped to 50%. And another 5 years later, the number of divergent thinking geniuses had dropped further still. And the only thing that had changed in those 5 years is that they got more education. I think that this is an important thing to think of because sometimes in our educational system, what we do is we tell people to memorize. We say, these are the facts. Here, regurgitate them back to me for the test. And that's not always the best way of educating, and it certainly doesn't teach people to think divergently. So I think that we have to have a balance between content and, testing people's ability to know right answers, but also be able to, promote that ability to think creatively. When we think, we collect data and gather information, and then we draw conclusions based on that information that we collect. What separates a critical thinker from a non-critical thinker? So a non-critical thinker will collect the data and come to a conclusion. The critical thinker will collect the data and then will evaluate, analyze, and question that data, and then use a set of logic to come to a conclusion. There's an old joke about a giraffe in the refrigerator, and and that says, how many elephants can you put in a refrigerator? And you say, 1. You just open the door and you put the elephant in the refrigerator. And then the joke goes, well, how many giraffes can you fit in a refrigerator? And the answer is none, because the elephant is in the refrigerator. So it's one of those sort of kindergarten jokes, but essentially it's asking you to move through a set of logic to say that the giraffe can't fit in the refrigerator because the elephant is there. Critical thinking requires questions, and those are questions of other people's thinking and of our own thinking. We have to be able to do both. So we have to be able to ask questions such as, what are the facts? Do I have all the facts? And where is the evidence that supports these facts? Facts are a statement that are backed up directly by evidence. So a fact of this picture is that this boy is smiling. We can see the smile on his face in this picture. An opinion is different from a fact. fact. An opinion is a statement that's based on your own emotions and your past experiences. So an opinion might be soccer's a fun sport by looking at this picture. An assumption is a statement that's accepted as true without proof. So for example, boys love running. So I'm just assuming that because I'm seeing this picture of this boy smiling and he seems to be running. An inference is a conclusion based on a fact or sometimes even an assumption. So for example, the boy is having fun. So we don't know that for sure, but I'm inferring it by the fact that he's smiling. We also then need, once we have facts, we have to evaluate these facts. How good is the evidence, and are the facts even relevant? So for example, the fact that this ice cream is blue is definitely a fact. But if we were asking the question, does this ice cream taste good? The fact that it's blue is not relevant to how it tastes. Once we have the facts and we've evaluated them and we've come to a conclusion, then we have to evaluate the conclusion. So is this conclusion fair and reasonable? Has it taken into account all of the facts that are available, or have we just cherry-picked a few? Can we verify this conclusion? Is it consistent with other information? Have alternative explanations or different points of view been considered? And finally, are there any logical flaws in this conclusion? So a conclusion is a statement that sums up all of the information that we've collected in order to make some sort of a point or a decision. And in order to do this, we have to take all the facts, compare them, look for omissions, mistakes, alternatives, different points of view, and finally we have to look up logical fallacies.